All right, can we start? Good morning, Mr. Giagos. You have a witness declaration in front of you. Can you read it, please, aloud?
Sorry, microphone.
I solemnly declare.
Microphone first.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe both, in fact, both.
I solemnly declare upon my honor and conscience that I shall speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. So, direct examination.
We do not want to do any direct.
Thank you. Then, cross-examination.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Tribunal, Council. Mr. Giagos, my name is David Alexander. I represent the Slovak Republic, and I'm going to be asking you questions this morning. It's important that you understand my questions before you answer, so if you don't, just let me know and I'll try to make it clear to you. You have a long history with Mr. Robal, do you not?
Yes, I do.
And how far back does that go?
To 1980.
And have you been involved in a number of business ventures with him over the years?
Yes, in quite a few.
You have a close relationship with him?
I would say yes.
Any familial connections of any sort?
What kind of connections?
Familial connections, brother-in-law, cousins,
No,
anything?
no. He's the husband. No, he was the husband of my ex-wife.
I see. That might not be too close anymore. But in any event, your relationship with him persevered. Okay. And how many business activities have you had with him over the years?
Jesus.
Broadly defined, how many deals have you been in with him?
Maybe 10.
And when was the first one?
The first one was with Stanholm Resources. It was in, I don't know, I had it somewhere here.
Approximately.
In the 80s, beginning 82, 84, somewhere there.
All right. Now, as I understand it, you were first introduced to Gamerska Paloma back in 1990 or so. Is that right?
1990?
1990.
No,
No.
later.
All right.
About 98, 99.
1998 or 1999. So, when you first learned about the project, that was the first time.
Yes.
And how did you come to learn about it?
I had some friends working at the mining office in Slovakia, and they advised me that there is a very good, clean talc deposit in eastern Slovakia, which is close to my hometown. So I decided to go and have a look at it.
Right? You have your witness statement before you. If I could ask you just to take a look at paragraph 6 there. Where you say, I heard about the
1990,
1990, and I wanted to ask, does that
it
help?
might be, you know,
It's been a long time.
yeah, you know, after that I had a mini stroke and so numbers I don't remember very well.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Sorry.
But in any event, in 1997 or so, Gamerska Paloma was on your radar screen again.
Yes.
All right. And was Mr. Robal involved with getting it on your radar screen again?
Yes, he was.
And did you then travel to Slovakia?
Yes, I did.
And you did some diligence concerning the project?
Sort of, just through the people whom I know, the miners and people who knew about that project.
What did Mr. Robal ask you to do when you traveled to Slovakia about the Gamerska Paloma project?
He didn't ask me to do anything.
Did you understand that he was interested in the project?
Yes,
So basically, you went to check it out.
yeah.
Who did you talk to who was already involved in the project, if anyone?
I spoke to Dr. Rozložník, who is here also today, and there were two Germans from Thyssen and Dorfner. But it was very, very short conversation because they were not very happy with me.
So, in your first meeting with Dr. Rozložník, and you mentioned, and there were two other Germans from Thyssen and Dorfner that you
Dorfner, yeah,
spoke to.
they were.
Okay, it's a little tricky here for the court reporter if we talk over each other, and I might be guilty of it too at some point, so.
Sorry.
But let's try to let each other finish, if that's all right. So let me rephrase it. So, two Germans from Thyssen and Dorfner, you don't remember their names?
No,
All right. But you understood they were associated with the project.
they were.
Did you look at the feasibility study at that point?
Yes, I did.
And did you look at the, any
to-
other documents that you recall?
I have to remind you, I'm not a mining engineer, nor a geologist, but they showed me the documents, all what I can say.
Well, we may be able to talk to each other today, since I'm not either. I think this might work. So what other documents do you remember looking at?
They showed me the drill holes where they drilled, the plan, where they drilled, and that was about it.
Did you later come to review something called the Hansa Geomin report?
Not me, because, as I said, I'm not a geologist, not an engineer.
Are you more of a finance person?
Yes. Was trying to raise money.
Did you come to understand during that visit to Slovakia in 1997 that Dorfner and Thyssen were interested in finding a strong financial partner?
No, I didn't know that.
What was your understanding of the financing at the time?
At which time?
1997, same time.
When I met them,
Yes.
I thought that they will be my partners, and or our partners. They were partners with Rima Murai till that time, and then we heard that they want to sell out, and I thought that it may be a good opportunity for Belmont to buy their shares. So we purchased their shares in, the dates, as I said, I don't really remember dates.
Did you meet with Mr. Chore at that time?
Yes, I did.
How many times did you meet with him?
Too many times, to be honest.
But in any event, you ultimately decided to become his partner.
Yes.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you were thinking about Dorfner and Thyssen becoming your partner a second ago.
That they will be also there. I didn't know that they want to
All
sell
right.
out.
Help us understand, if you would, what your role is with EuroGas, that you are comfortable using the phrase that they would be your partners. In 1997, what was your role?
When I went there, I went with EuroGas people, not us Belmont. I went there with EuroGas people, and I felt pretty comfortable with them.
Did you have any particular status with EuroGas at the time?
I'm not sure if I was a director, because at one point of the time, I was a director, but as I said,
All right.
I don't know when.
But your discussions with Dorfner and Thyssen, Chore, were all on behalf of Belmont. I'm sorry, of
EuroGas.
EuroGas.
Yes.
Did you participate in discussions where Mr. Chore identified the need for financing?
No.
You have before you also some other witness statements. I'm going to ask you to look at Mr. Robal's statement, if you would, please. Yeah. Have you read his witness statement before?
No.
Take a look, if you would, please, at paragraph 20. Do you see there in the first sentence where it says,
During our first discussion.
During our first discussions, Mr. Chore clearly stated that Rima Moran was unable to provide the financing necessary for the project to move forward. I agreed that EuroGas would supply the financing which Rima Moran was looking for, provided that a satisfactory agreement be found regarding the status and involvement of EuroGas in the project. Does that refresh your recollection about?
No, I'm sure I wasn't at the meeting.
You weren't at the
No.
meeting? All right.
No, it wasn't that when I met Chore, no.
All right. Now, was Mr. Robal also on this visit with you?
On which visit?
Your first visit to Slovakia
We went there many times with Mr. Raval.
in
Yes.
1997?
Yes,
And Mr. Robal was with you?
yes.
Did you come to have an understanding from further discussions with Mr. Robal that Rima Moran was unable to provide the financing necessary?
That I did hear from Mr. Raval,
All right.
yes.
And how long after your first meeting with Mr. Chore did you learn that he was in need of financing for the project?
That's pretty soon afterwards. Pretty soon afterwards.
Did you develop the impression that it was a real priority for him to get financing?
Yes, I did.
And did you get that impression not only from your discussions with Mr. Robal, but also from your discussions with Mr. Chore?
That's true.
Did you know that in the earliest days of the project, Dorfner and Tyson had originally been viewed as a financing partners, that they were going to
Yes,
be?
I did know.
All right. They were quite substantial companies, weren't they?
Yes.
Did their presence in the project give you confidence?
Yes,
And why is that?
because they were too big conglomerate in Germany. And we thought with partners like them, it would be very nice to start a project like Gemerska Poloma. But then about a year later, they went out of it, maybe even sooner.
Maybe even sooner than a year they wanted out.
Yes,
How long after EuroGas came into the project did you learn that they wanted out?
I would say about a year. I would say about a year.
Now, were you aware of Dorfner and Tyson's reputation in the mining industry?
No, no,
Had you ever worked with them before?
no,
Do you know if Mr. Robal had ever worked with them before?
no, I don't know about it.
So, your early diligence is you talked to Dorfner, Tyson, Chore.
As I said, to Dorfner and Tyson, very, very little.
Very, very later.
Very, very little to to Chore, yes. Because he spoke Slovak and Rozložník, to them, yes, but not to Dorfner and Tyson.
Did you also look at the Hansa Geomin report? I think I asked you that
Yes.
before.
No, I didn't.
Didn't see that?
No.
Okay.
I
Now-
heard about it, but I did not look at it, no. If I would look at it, it wouldn't matter to me because I wouldn't understand it anyway.
I understand. It did have a lot of financial information in it. Did you happen to review that?
No,
Do you know what cost estimates they'd made?
no, for that, I had a CFO in our office who was looking at it, and our lawyers in Vancouver.
So you came to your own determinations about what capital would be required?
We were talking about it in the office, at the board meeting, if it would be good to buy when it was brought to us. It was brought to us by the name of, I don't know that person's name, I forgot. But anyway, a person from a German, I think so, he was also a German, brought it to us.
Mr. Robal has testified that he met with Hansa Geomin and DEG. Do you remember the
No, I don't.
DEG name?
Name, yes, but I don't know what kind of people who were there.
Did you ever meet with DEG?
No,
How about Deutsche Bank? Maybe that's the
No,
same
no.
institution. I get a little confused by the
EG
references.
It may be,
Yeah.
but no.
Did you ever get involved in discussions about the stage of drilling that had already been undertaken at the project?
Not with them, with some friends who knew that project inside out.
And who were the friends that you talked to about it?
One was by the name of Tozer, Tozer, Toszor, and the other one was Carol. I don't know his last name, but they were friends, two friends.
Do you remember discussing the question of whether underground drilling after the mine had been opened would be necessary to assess
No,
the
no,
deposit?
no, we never came to that point.
Did you ever look at the Kleibhofer report?
What report?
Kleibhofer?
No.
Now, as you were considering on behalf of EuroGas potential investment, and as the finance guy, what was your plan for financing the project if you were to invest
For EuroGas now, you're talking or for Belmont?
for EuroGas? Because at this point in time, in
Oh,
1997, oh, wait a minute,
I was,
wait a minute, we're talking
okay,
over
go
each
ahead,
other
go,
again.
sorry.
Let me
sorry,
finish.
Yeah,
At this point, you're there only on behalf of
EuroGas.
EuroGas.
Yes.
And you're the finance guy, right?
No, for EuroGas was Wolfgang, the finance guy.
Mr. Robal.
Mr. Awal, yes. And I was there with him because I knew also people who would like to invest for Belmont. So I wanted to see what is happening.
So you were there thinking both about Belmont and EuroGas?
Yes,
But Belmont didn't invest initially, correct?
no.
Why is that?
To whom? Nobody was selling that yet. EuroGas invested through Rima Murany, bought 56% of Rima Murany shares from Rima Murany. And Dorfner had 22 or 34, something like that. That together of them, Dorfner and Thyssen had 57%.
And after that initial investment, did you ever personally have discussions with any lenders about the possibility of loaning to the project?
No,
Did you ever have any discussions with other potential investors about whether they might come in and provide capital?
for which company?
EuroGas?
EuroGas, no, no,
right.
never.
And how about for Belmont, after you came in?
After when we
later?
came in, yes, I had discussions.
All right. Were you ever able to close a deal with a potential investor and have them actually come in?
No,
Why was that?
because they all were only talk. Everybody loved the project, but then when we bought it, I asked them to come and contribute some money to the. Everybody was busy, no money. We had money left, some money in the treasury still, but we needed it for the corporation, working capital and so and so.
And how, over what period of time did your efforts to bring in a potential investor occur?
You have to excuse me. You're talking now again about EuroGas only or Belmont again?
Well, I should have been clearer, I'm sorry. You'd already said you never did it on behalf of EuroGas, so I had shifted then to Belmont.
Yeah.
So, wearing your Belmont hat later in time, over what period were you having discussions with potential investors?
When we purchased the interest from Dorfner and Thyssen.
And so that would have been in early 2000,
Yes, 2000 something, maybe 2001. or
all
so.
right? And then, did you ever have further discussions with investors about the possibility of coming in and bringing capital to the project?
Yes, I had with one. He was a Slovak guy, also from Bratislava, who came to visit me a couple of times to Vancouver, but it never came through.
And do you know if Mr. Robal also attempted to bring equity investors into the project who might provide financing?
Yes.
And
he was
how-
always looking for investors.
He was always looking for
For
them?
investors for the project.
All right. And was he ever successful in bringing an investor in with cash and closing the deal?
Yes, many times, many times, over and over. That's why I went with him, because I knew his reputation, I knew that he can bring people in, so I was quite confident that it will work out.
But my question really is, on this project,
Yes,
did he ever find an investor who brought cash to the deal?
which one would it be? I don't know.
All right?
I
I'll
don't
come
know.
back to that in
Yeah,
a little
good.
bit.
Yes, please, let me think about it. If,
You're familiar with the phrase de-risk?
no,
Never heard of it.
no. What was it, the risk?
De-risk.
No.
Let me see if I can define it for you, at least to my understanding, and then maybe we can have a working understanding. My understanding is that it has to do with when does the project get to a phase where the financial and technical risk has been essentially eliminated. Fair enough?
Yeah, okay.
From your perspective, did the Gomerska Paloma project ever get to a point where the technical and financial risk had been eliminated?
Financial, not really, but technical, yes, because they had all the documentation about the project.
Right.
Feasibility study ready, everything.
So from your perspective, thinking about risk in a mine, it has two components, financial and technical.
Yes.
Now, in your dealings with Dorfner and Tyson in that limited period where they stayed in after EuroGas came in, that was less than, or about a year, I guess, you said.
Yes.
Did you work with them pretty closely?
No. As I told you, I met them only once.
All right, okay.
I met some director, but I don't know what, he was a director there. Also only once.
Did, you've read Mr. Rozloznik's witness statement, I assume? Haven't read it?
No.
Okay, maybe I'll give you a chance to do that if you could take a look. What tab is that?
Number 6.
Number 6, if the tribunal wants to see it.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask you a question about paragraph 11. And in particular, just to tell you where I'm going so you can read as much as you want. 11 and 12, both Dorfner and Tyson are described as a world-renowned mining and processing corporation. That's Dorfner. And Tyson is described as a world leader in the field of mining technology. Do you agree with that?
I would, because I knew nothing about them. I knew they were from Germany and they were good mining people, but that I cannot prove nor disapprove.
All right,
His statement, he knew them much better than I did.
all right. And based on your working experience with Mr. Rozloznik, do you think he was in a position to know whether they were world leaders or not?
Yes, yes,
So you would trust him in that?
yes, I would trust him.
Now, did there come a point in time when there was discussion between EuroGas representatives and Dorfner and Tyson, who were already shareholders in the company,
Yes.
in Roseman. Did there come a point in time when it was made clear that EuroGas would like to become a shareholder in Roseman?
That I don't know. I know that once we met them at the airport in Vienna, that's, if before was or not, I don't know.
Is it your testimony that you weren't talking to Mr. Robal about how things were going?
About this, no.
Hold on.
No.
I got to finish the question. Wasn't there a point in time when you were talking to Mr. Robal about how things were going with Dorfner and Tyson?
No.
Never talked to him about it?
No. No.
You learned, though, that not long after Mr. Robal and EuroGas entered the project, that Dorfner and Tyson announced rather abruptly that they were going to leave.
Yes.
What was your understanding as to why they wanted to do that?
Have no idea.
No
I know
idea.
that Mr. Abal was always talking to Rima Murain to buy their portion of their investment, but not to Dorfner and Tyson. No, I don't know about that, nothing.
Now, you'd mentioned before that it gave you comfort as you were assessing the situation to know that Dorfner, companies like Dorfner and Tyson were in the project, correct?
Yes.
Did it concern you that they were abruptly leaving the project?
To be honest, yes.
In fact, you thought that might be something of a tall red flag to other potential investors, didn't you? You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Kind of a warning sign?
I heard that they don't like to work anymore in Slovakia and so, but it doesn't, everybody's talking, so I didn't pay any attention.
You didn't have any discussions?
No.
With,
With,
hold on a second. Your testimony before this tribunal is that you're the finance guy working with Mr. Robal, and you never talked to him about Tyson and Dorfner's
No.
abrupt announcement that they were leaving the project?
no,
Never came up?
no.
So after they pulled out, new plans had to be made about how it was going to be structured going forward, right?
You have to repeat that, I don't hear well.
After they announced they were leaving in 1999, new plans had to be made, correct?
Yes,
And were there attempts to sell their interest?
this was brought to us, as I said, by a German fellow. I don't know his name, but I have the name in the office and I can email it today and get his name, who said that Dorfner and Tyson want to sell their interest.
And who were the interested buyers?
Belmont.
That's the only one.
So far, only one. I heard that China Clay was interested in it, but I heard it from the third party whom I don't believe.
So we probably shouldn't take much account of that either.
No,
Okay,
at all.
all right. And any other interested buyers in 2000 when they were selling their controlling
No,
interest?
not as far as I know.
Let's take a look at Mr. Dorfner's witness statement if we could.
Tab number 4, is the first witness statement.
You've never read this statement before
No,
either, is that
no.
correct? All right, take a look, if you would, please, at 14. Where he testifies, mostly due to the fact that the investment into the deposit was still considered very risky, only 2 buyers showed any interest in the project. In particular, the French company Luznac, a major worldwide producer of talc, and EuroGas, represented by Mr. Robal. Does the interest of Luzenac ring any bells with you?
Chorey was mentioning to me name of Luzenac, but I do not know nothing about it.
Do you know whether they had been exploring the possibility of coming into the project for some
No,
time?
I don't know.
Nobody ever brought that to your attention?
No,
So as far as you knew, Belmont was the only bidder for a controlling interest in Roseman,
that's correct.
right? Did that surprise you?
Not really. Not really, because we wanted to buy it and I was happy, especially when I heard what I don't believe, as I said, that China Clay was interested in it.
Now, you bought in early 2000, is that right?
I don't know the dates, as I said, I don't remember numbers and dates, but yes.
All right. Now, at that point in time, Roseman had already done some additional drilling work, hadn't they?
Yes, they did.
And Roseman and Mr. Robal thought that drilling work was very important, right?
Yes, they did.
In fact, he went so far as to say that that additional drilling work done between 1997 and 1999 had pretty much eliminated the risks on a technical side, correct?
No, I never heard that remark.
Never heard that?
No, no.
All right. You thought there was still risk there?
No,
So you disagree with Mr. Dorfner when he said, mostly due to the fact that the investment in the deposit was still considered very risky, you disagree with that?
yes, I disagree.
But you're not a technical guy, right?
I'm not.
And Mr. Dorfner was very much a technical guy, wasn't he?
He was.
How did you determine the value to offer? How did you determine the value of a controlling interest in Roseman?
By Rima Murang spending there what they spent or what they didn't, they owed money to Dorfner and Thyssen, and how much was their deposit, what was blocked out. That's how we determined.
So you assessed the cost that had been spent on the project to date
Yes.
by Dorfner and Tyson?
No, because I didn't know how much they spent there. But they told us they spent there 1.5 million on drilling and on the work done on the deposit.
And what other factors did you consider in determining what you were going to offer? What was blocked out? What do you mean by that?
By the ton, how many tons we can mine out and what would be the
Take a look at
value of
paragraph.
it.
I'm sorry. Were you through?
What would be the value of that ore?
All right. Did you have any professional advisors helping you determine it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Who did you work with?
From Vancouver with mining engineers.
So you came up with your own estimate of value.
Yes,
Did you negotiate with them?
we tried.
Did you have any luck?
No, we wanted to pay them only half in cash and half in the shares of the company, and they didn't go for it.
They insisted on a cash deal.
Yes, cash only.
Take a look at the paragraph 15 in that same witness statement. Where Mr. Dorfner, and by the way, he's not going to be cross-examined, which is why I'm spending some time with you on his statement. Do you see there where they say that what the total purchase price was? 1,457,000 euros. Do you see that?
Yeah, that's about right. Yes.
Oh, that's good. Now, then the next sentence, he explains how the purchase price was calculated. Do you see that? Goes over to the next page.
By also girlfriend, yeah. That's what I said.
Sort of a cost plus. Is that right?
Yes.
Their cost plus time value of money plus a profit margin. And you agreed to pay that?
Yes.
And they held firm at that price?
And we also know what is there. So it was just bonus. Yes.
Do you see the last sentence there where Dorfner testifies, since the deposit was not de-risked, it was not marketable, and it was not possible to set the sale price otherwise? Do you see that?
Where is that?
That's the very last sentence
Since,
of paragraph 15.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Do you see that?
Yes, I see.
At least from the perspective of Dorfner, the technical guy, who'd been there at that point 5 years, is that right?
Yes. About,
From his perspective, the deposit was not de-risked. Is that right? Is that how you understand it?
that's what he says.
That's what he
yes.
says. And he also thought the property was not marketable. Would that be consistent with the fact that, to your knowledge, no other buyers showed up to express interest?
No, no,
It wouldn't.
no.
What's your explanation for why no other buyers would show up and express interest at the time you were bidding?
Because at that time, nobody was interested in talc.
The market was weak.
Yeah.
The
very
market
weak.
for talc?
Yeah, and now it's much better, a lot better.
Right. But at this point in time, in 2000, your view is the market was so weak that there wasn't another buyer with any interest.
As I said, only that one what I don't believe was a buyer.
Right. So
China
we ought to
Clay.
quit talking about him, shouldn't we? You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, so you came into the project and you had kind of a rough year at Belmont, had some heavy losses, as I understand it. Is that right? In 2000?
In 2000.
Let's show him this witness statement.
Who's?
Your witness statement.
This is mine.
Take a look at paragraph 15, if you would, please. This is your witness statement. Very first sentence.
Yes.
After having purchased its 57% interest in Roseman, Belmont further investigated the project and came to the conclusion that it would need to raise greater sums than anticipated to prepare the deposit for its commercial development. You see that?
Yes.
What sums were you anticipating before you bought in?
Before I bought in, we were anticipating that the whole deposit to develop would cost 75 millions
75 million
crowns,
crowns,
Slovak crowns.
all right?
That was the from Mr. Chore.
And can you,
His estimate.
can you help me so I don't have to walk
It
down?
was 1 to 20
1 to 20, so.
to Deutschmarks. To,
Ru-
to
roughly
dollars 1 to 30.
3 million,
Yes.
5 euros, something like that?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
And so you'd been there about a year and you said.
Over a year and a couple of months.
Okay. But how long did it take you to come to the conclusion that greater sums would be needed to prepare it?
How long? Immediately after we hired Chore to do the work for us, and he each month he wanted an amendment to the agreement.
Now,
So it was growing and growing, mushrooming.
and did you have a new estimate of what the total cost was going to
No,
be?
no, we didn't have that.
You thought it was going to continue to grow?
Yes,
Now, you also say in that paragraph that Belmont had incurred significant losses in 2000. That was a factor for you?
the 15 is there. Yeah. Yeah, maybe, I don't remember that.
You don't
know,
remember?
I don't remember how much losses we incurred, but we probably did.
All right. So you entered into the share purchase agreement in early
2001.
2001. All right. Mr. Agigos, did there come a time when you learned that let me withdraw that. I'm going to back up and go to something else. Excuse me one moment. Heidecker had been the general manager of the project before you
Yes,
came in,
that's right.
right? And did you come to know him?
I met him twice.
All right. Did he seem like a competent individual?
Yes,
And Mr. Robal made the decision to ask him to stay on the project, right?
yes,
And did you discuss that decision with him?
no. When I saw Mr. Heidecker's contract expired and he wanted double of his salary, I said no,
Right. But you didn't say anything about that in your witness statement, did you?
no.
And I didn't even ask you a question about that.
Yeah, but that what was the reason, and I
Just
have,
something that kind of important you wanted to get out?
it's not important to me, maybe.
All right. Can you point me to any documents which suggest any basis to say what you just said, that he'd asked for double?
I can, but I don't have them here. I have them in Vancouver. I can
I see.
email you those documents.
Okay.
And maybe Heidecker has it, and I understood that he's coming here to a witness stand, to be a witness, so he must have it too.
Actually, that's not going to be possible because the claimants have waived the opportunity to cross-examine him as well, Mr. Heidecker. But at least from your perspective, your view was, he's been there a while, Mr. Robal's made a decision to keep him on. That sounded like a good idea to you.
No, because Mr. Abal had only together together with Rima Morain, only 43% interest in the company.
But he was working for Roseman, correct? Heidecker was?
Yes,
Right. There wasn't any opposition from Belmont to keeping him on, correct?
on the beginning, no.
No. You did become aware that there was a lot of friction with Dorfner and Tyson, and that was the background to
No, I
your
didn't know
coming in.
that at all. That's
Didn't
the
know that at
problem.
all? Okay. Now, do you remember learning anything about Dorfner and Tyson's concern that when EuroGas and Mr. Robal were entering the project, it might complicate things for the Deutsche Bank?
No, no.
What was your understanding as to why EuroGas bought into Rima Moran rather than buying directly into Roseman?
Because they didn't want to sell. And Chore was looking for investor for money. He had no money. So he sold his part of his investment.
Do you know if Dorfner and Tyson were even aware that EuroGas was going to enter the project through Rima Moran?
No,
They weren't aware?
no, I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I don't know that.
Did you have any involvement with Deutsche Bank and their continuing interest in financing?
No,
So by the time you got to the project, they were gone.
I think so, because I never heard about them.
Let's take a look, if we can, at Mr. Dorfner's witness statement again. Take a look at paragraph 11, if you would, please. End of 1997, Mr. Chore from Rima Moran approached OSTU, that's the Tyson affiliate, right?
Yes,
And Gebruder Dorfner with an idea to secure financing for the project by involving EuroGas GmbH, an Austrian mining company. Goes on to say such a cooperation was not acceptable because at this time we had negotiations with Deutsche Bank and there was concern that the entry of a new partner might scare off the German bank. I'm paraphrasing, so you should read to see if you agree with my
no,
paraphrase.
I never knew about it.
Didn't know
No,
anything
never,
about it.
Never heard. This is the first time I see it.
But by the time you were there, as you say, they weren't involved anymore.
No,
Now, I want to go back to Luzenac. Remember we mentioned that
yes.
they had a possible interest in purchasing at the same time you did?
That what I heard from Chore.
Right.
But I'm not sure about it.
Okay. Did you know anything about Luzenac?
I heard the name Luzenac. That's a French company.
Did you know anything else about it?
No,
Do you know why Dorfner and Tyson believed EuroGas and Mr. Robal to be an inappropriate partner?
have no idea what was between them.
Never heard a word about it.
No, never.
You became a director of EuroGas?
Yes,
Did Mr. Robal ever disclose to you that there'd been friction
no,
with Dorfner and Tyson?
no.
Never told you
Never,
that?
never.
Now, after you bought the 57% controlling interest in Roseman, well, at the time you bought it, you were a public company, correct?
Yes, yes, that's right.
And traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange?
On the Vancouver Stock Exchange
Any other exchanges?
and the U.S. over the counter.
Did you make US SEC filings?
Yes, we did.
And, of course, Canadian filings?
Yes,
And Canadian law, like US law, requires you to file annual
annual
financials?
reports.
Annual financial statements,
Yes.
correct? And as a experienced businessman, would you agree that's a pretty serious thing to file a financial statement?
That's right.
And as an experienced businessman, you know that the statements you're making there are representations of management, not your auditors. You know that, don't you?
Yes,
And do you take the filing of financial statements to be a serious undertaking?
yes, I am.
And in Canada, are there criminal penalties for filing false financial statements?
Yes,
And those penalties can be serious, can't they?
I don't know, we never ever find.
Now, before you purchased the shares from Dorfner and Tyson in 2000, well, let's go to the time you purchased it. Do you remember how you booked the transaction?
No, that's only the CFO can answer this question.
Right.
Because it was approved by the Vancouver Stock Exchange.
Let's take a look, if we can, at R41 at tab 3 of your witness binder.
In mine,
Yeah. Maria's going to help you there.
to the rocket, 2001.
So these would be the financial statements for the period after you'd bought the interest from Dorfman and
Yes.
Tyson, correct? Is that right?
I don't know,
All right, well, let's take a look. Maybe we
it
can-
says here,
Look at note 2, if you would, please.
note 2,
Note 2, it's significant accounting policies. Can you help me find that, Maria? Fortunately, they're not page numbered. It's back.
yeah, it's here,
Do you see it?
yes.
Let me first ask you, you're familiar with the concept of consolidation of the operations of a subsidiary company?
Sort of, that's not my business, that's the CFO who is doing it and the auditors.
What was your role in Belmont at the time these financial statements were filed?
In 2000, I was the president.
And given your own characterization of yourself as the finance guy, you obviously reviewed these before they were
Yes,
filed.
I do.
Right. And you wanted to ensure that they were accurate,
Correct.
because, as we said, it's a serious undertaking. Yes?
Yes,
Now look under the section called consolidation. Do you see that? And then scan down to Roseman. Do you see that? The bottom of the page?
Here.
yes, go ahead.
So you report there, management reports there, that the company owns 57% interest pursuant to a share purchase agreement. The acquisition has been accounted for using the purchase method. And you go on to report that by reason of the acquisition, and this is, of course, the acquisition from Dorfner and Tyson, you consolidate the financial affairs of the subsidiary company, Roseman, into these financial statements, correct?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not an accountant, but whatever the auditors said that is right, is right.
Well, just so we're clear on it, I'm reading really under consolidation. The accounts of these companies have been consolidated on the following bases, and then, of course, Roseman's listed. You follow so far?
Yes, I am.
All right. Now, then in 2001, you signed the share purchase agreement. And let's take a look now at tab 8, the share purchase agreement with EuroGas for the sale of the 57%.
2001,
Let me slow down and make sure everybody's, we're tab 8. And now we're looking at the audited consolidated financial statement for the years ended January 31, 2002, 2001.
yes,
This would have been for the year which included the execution of the share purchase
the purchase,
agreement
yes.
with EuroGas. You understand?
EuroGas.
Yes. In March of
Oh, yeah,
2001.
when we sold it, you mean the EuroGas shares?
Yes,
Yes,
yes. When you sold it to EuroGas, March of 2001, under the share purchase agreement.
Yes.
Are you with me?
yes, I am.
All right. So these are the consolidated financial statements for that period. Do you understand that?
yes.
All right. Now, in R114, under the same section of the financial statement
Good.
on significant accounting policies, you see the section entitled Consolidation?
Page number.
Let me pause here for a second. Is there
I
some
found it,
confusion?
But
You have to
if
slow
you
down.
told us each time how many pages we have to turn.
All right. Thank you, I apologize.
It's
I'll see
easier.
if I can do better. You with us, Maria?
Yes. Significant accounting policies, you mean?
Yes, significant accounting policies were in the same section of the financial statement we looked at in the prior exhibit under consolidation, and this time I want you to read down to what the discussion is about Roseman at this point. See that?
No.
We don't, if you don't tell us more precisely.
All right, so I'm in 114,
It's consolidation.
I know, but
I know.
and so I'm over on the page that is labeled at the top, Operations, and then underneath it, Significant Accounting Policies.
Say significant accounting.
okay, yes.
Do you have that, Maria?
We have significant accounting policies.
Sure why these aren't numbered, but.
Operations, yes, we are there.
Okay. All right, now down in the section of significant accounting policies, under consolidation, which as you'll recall is the same section we looked at in the prior exhibit.
Yes,
This time, under Roseman, management represents, the company sold its 57% interest in Roseman, SRO, effective March 27, 2001. The accounts and operations of Roseman have been consolidated in the accounts up to the date of the disposition. Do you see that?
yes, I do.
And what do you think the date of the disposition is referring to there? Is that the date the share purchase agreement was executed? Is that your understanding?
I don't remember that.
All right. Let's look at the next page where that discussion continues. Under proceeds of disposition, and then the paragraph that begins, the company holds the Roseman SRO shares pending settlement of the amount of guarantee shares to be issued by EuroGas and completion of the U.S. registration statement, which requires the inclusion of certain information from EuroGas. And then it goes on, and this is the part I want to focus on. The company has recorded the EuroGas transaction as a sale and disposition of a subsidiary and holds the shares as a collateral measure only. Do you see that?
I see that, but that's not the way it was, because the purchase never went through. They
Yeah.
never paid the full amount what they were supposed to pay.
But Mr. Agigos, if the sale didn't go through, your financial statements contain misrepresentations, don't they, sir?
No. That's
It-
how much we would get.
So you're
Oh,
saying,
I'm not an accountant, Mr.
Alexander,
Alexander, I'm not an accountant, so don't try to hold me by my words, but honestly, that's, if the accountant told us that we have to do it, we did it this way. And
Well-
those are chartered accountant, so we cannot argue with them.
you're familiar with the concept of generally accepted accounting
Yeah.
procedures. And you don't have any reason to believe they would be asking you to do something that wasn't accurate or consistent with their responsibilities as auditors, do you?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So if they reviewed the transaction, correct?
Yes, they did.
And you explained to them what had happened in the transaction,
Yes, I did.
and the decision by management was to book it as a sale and disposition as of the effective date of the APA, correct?
No, because we were still waiting a year from then for the registration for the shares. But at that time, the share price, I don't know what the day when we acquired it, what was the share price? It might have been 15, 20 cents.
Are you telling the tribunal that your financial statements are inaccurate?
No, I'm not.
I didn't think so.
No, I don't, I'm not.
And are you telling the tribunal that the statement in this audited financial statement filed with both Canadian authorities and SEC authorities, that the company has recorded the EuroGas transaction as a sale and disposition and holds the shares as a collateral measure only? Are you telling the tribunal that that was not accurate?
That was not accurate.
Right.
It is, we held the shares until we get paid, fully paid. Maybe I don't understand it because I'm not an accountant, or a lawyer, but that was the truth, and the reason is, that's why we held it.
Do you see the statement, EuroGas acquired effective control of Roseman on March 27, 2001? Is that true?
True that, yes, but they never paid for it.
Well, it doesn't say anything here about payment. I'm just saying, is it true that on that date, they acquired effective control?
They do, that I don't know, that I cannot tell you if they acquired or not, because we were still controlling the shares.
All right.
The shares were ours.
Have you ever taken any steps to file a restatement of your financial statement?
No, no,
Has anyone ever suggested to
no,
you you should?
never.
Never. So, after the date of the transaction, isn't it true that from every year going forward, you continued the same accounting treatment in your financial statements?
That's true.
Let's turn to tab 9 of his bundle, if we may. This is the record of your examination as a witness before Slovak criminal authorities. Do you recall this? Have you seen this document before?
I did,
And you recall speaking to criminal authorities?
yes.
Could you tell the tribunal the background of how it is you came to go speak to the criminal authorities?
Oh, we made the appointment with them because of Mr. Chore. Mr. Chore, in his declaration, I read his witness statement, even he declared that he sold his interest in the company of Rimamurain to EuroGas for 1,000 euros or dollars. In fact, he sold it for 1,550,000 Deutschmarks. And we were called there because of that, so I told them about it. What can I do?
And who had initiated the criminal proceedings involving Mr. Choi?
I have absolutely no idea.
No idea.
I didn't for sure.
You don't recall ever talking to Mr. Robal about initiating criminal proceedings against Mr. Chore?
I did. I do remember that he wanted to initiate.
Yeah, Mr. Robal did?
Yes.
Yeah. And that was because of a witness statement he'd filed in some proceeding? Or was it in this proceeding?
I have no idea about why.
All right. But Mr. Robal asked you to be helpful and give a statement?
Join him, yes, and I gave that statement.
Right. And did you have an opportunity to tell the authorities everything you wanted to tell them about it?
Yes,
They listened carefully?
not necessarily. They just listened what they wanted to hear.
Have
I
you
think
looked
so
at?
they were his friends. That was my feeling.
I know that was your feeling, but let's come at it this way. This statement, you've had an opportunity to review,
Yes, I did.
and you gave the statement under oath, correct?
Yes,
You were cautioned that giving a false statement was itself a crime, were you not?
yes,
And you said on page 3 that you've voluntarily come to be examined by the investigator. Do you recall that?
yes, I do.
And Mr. Robal had told you that he was going to be a witness in the investigation of Mr. Chore, and so you
Yeah,
were
he
going
was
to
there
go
too. He was there too.
with you.
We were three of there. Three
I'm
of
sorry?
us there. We were three of us there.
Uh-huh. Who was the third person?
The third person was Danny. His name was Danicek. He was a EuroGas director or something like that.
So all three of you went in.
Yeah, all three of us.
Now, in the paragraph under page 3 of the record of examination, do you see that? Now I want you to go down 3 paragraphs. Where it begins, Roseman had a license to carry out mining activities. You see that?
You have to be-
Let me read it to
I
you. Dick.
forgot my glasses.
Oh, that's
with
okay.
my- Yeah,
Roseman had a
Robin
license
had a license, yes.
to carry out mining activities since 1997, but due to a complicated situation on the talc market, Roseman was carrying out mainly the deposit survey. Do you see that?
Yes.
What was the situation on the talc market?
Oh, that's what I told you. The prices were very soft.
So they continued and how long did that softness continue?
I don't know. I'm not,
Several
not
years.
following. I'm not following it. I know that now they up, but I don't follow it.
So when you said you were carrying out mainly the deposit survey, what are you referring to there?
Yeah. No, this question you have to ask Mr. Rozoznik, because he was the one who was carrying out this survey, not me.
So you don't know anything about it?
No, I never went to that mining, so I
Right.
couldn't be.
But you did make this statement to the police?
No, I didn't make the statement. That's what Rosmi was carrying out, not me.
But my point is, you made the statement to the
But
police.
maybe I made, but I wasn't carrying it out. Rosmi was carrying it out.
Now, look down to the next paragraph, the sentence that begins, "He told me, Mr. Rozloznik and Mr. Bate, already in September 2004, in the office of the district mining office, during our visit, that if we did not start carrying out works on midnight of the last November day 2004, the mining rights would be revoked from us and a new selection procedure would be announced in order to assign the mining rights to a new holder." Did you make that statement to the police?
About Buffy? Because that Buffy said, not me.
Let's back up. I'm asking you if you made this statement to the police.
I made a statement to the police that what Mr. Buffy said. I don't
And-
know how he put it, But that's what Mr. Buffy said.
And you understood when you made this statement that you were under oath?
Yes. It is everything true there. As a matter of fact, I have here a letter from Mr. Rozložnik, what he sent us, and he advised that we started the work in the mine, just like Mr. Buffy suggested.
Mr. Chairman, I can't recall precisely if your program had identified timing on a break this morning. I'm wondering if this might be a convenient spot.
I think, I don't know if it's programmed or not, but I think what is important is for you to tell us what's the right time for
It
you.
would be helpful to me. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
15 minutes.
Thank you.
No, let's say until 10:30. 10:30.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman? That's the matter.
Mr. Agiagos,
Yes.
during this break, you must not talk with anyone about this
Yes, I was told
examination.
about that, and you can be assured that I will not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So when you like, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Agigos, are you ready to proceed? All right. I'd like to take...
Excuse me, I have to look at Mr.
Alexander.
Alexander, because I don't hear well. I have to look at him when he's talking, otherwise I don't know what he's talking about. I have to look at you. I would like to look at you.
No. You,
It is difficult for me that to hear what he's saying.
Sir, do you have before you, again, tab number 9, which is Exhibit R0115?
Number 9. Yes. Exhibit R. Young lady. She knows better about it than me.
And I'd like you to turn to page 5, if you could, please.
Yeah, here it is.
This is the same statement you gave to criminal authorities, as I understand.
I
that
tell
we-
you something, I
Excuse
just
me,
went now
sir,
where it-
Sir, let me finish, please. This is the same statement we were looking at a few minutes ago, which you gave under oath to criminal authorities. I wanted you to understand it's the same document. Are you with me?
Can I now go?
Yes.
I was looking at it, and it is not exactly the same. I don't know who translated it, but it's not exactly the same.
All right.
I saw only a few things, but
Is there
I
any?
cannot find that page where I saw that it is not the same.
Are you referring to the translation?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
You,
There is missing something good. Oh, yeah, it's here, part 4. In the mind, I don't see it in Slovak because where is the part 4?
A čo konkrétne hľadáte? To bude asi strana 4.
Toto, čo chcem, že tu hovoríme, že v tom was sold for 1 million. Tu part 4. A kde v slovenčine to part 4 je tam? Aha, OK. No, I found it. It's OK.
all right.
Yes.
So. All right. So I just wanted you to understand what document we were looking at. It was the document in which you were under oath,
Yes.
giving the statement to criminal authorities, having been invited by Mr. Robal. Do you recall that?
By Mr. Raubal there?
Yes,
No, we went there with Mr. Raubal.
right.
Yeah.
And he asked you to go?
Yes.
That's all I meant.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we're on the same page, let's get to the same page. Let's look at page 5.
Sorry, just if there is any doubt as to the correctness of this translation, you have the Slovak,
Yeah, I have that, but I cannot read it.
so
so
you can check.
All right, you see on page 5,
Yes,
the paragraph that begins with regard to the fact, down towards the bottom of the page. With regard to the fact that Belmont Vancouver sold its business share around 2002 to company EuroGas, we did not incur direct damage. EuroGas incurred direct damage, which is very significant. Do you see that?
yes,
Did you make that statement under oath to?
Yes, I made that
Excuse me,
statement.
let me finish. Did you make that statement under oath to Slovak police? Yes or no?
yes. Can I now say what it is not added there to this statement? This was, we sold our 55% interest to EuroGas. That's what I said after, under the oath. But it was due to certain conditions. This is not there. And I
Is
looked
it in
over
the,
it.
sorry, is it in the Slovak original, or is it something which is also missing in the?
No, 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 it is
in
not in the
Slovak?
Slovak original. I overlooked it, and it's not there. But it was due to the certain condition that we sold. That's why we didn't incur any damages, because by that time, still EuroGas had the chance to buy those shares from us. But then, it never went through. What year was that?
But there's no doubt in your mind you made this statement under oath to
Yeah,
the police?
yes, yes, there is no doubt.
And let's talk a little bit about those conditions you've just mentioned. After you received the shares from EuroGas,
Yes,
12,000 shares, is that correct?
that's correct.
You sold some of those shares.
We sold them at the open market about year and a half later, because they never registered those shares as we were promised, but with registration S or K or whatever was it, what is in the United States. Registration S, yes,
And once you received those shares and they were duly registered with a registration statement, you had the right to sell them
Yes.
or retain them.
yes,
And if you were satisfied with the market price in the open market, you had the right to sell them.
that's correct.
Or you had the right to hold on to them as long as you wanted to.
No, that wasn't clear. That wasn't clear, how long we can hold to it. We want to receive back our money, our investment, in the amount of 125% from the sale of the shares.
I understand what you're now saying your goal was. My point is, under the agreement, you had the right to hold the shares as long as you wanted to.
Yeah, definitely, but that wasn't the idea. We didn't want to hold the shares.
Your desire was to liquidate them, and after the...
Holding period.
Excuse me, and after the registration statement was filed, you made the decision when you wanted to sell and if you were satisfied with the market price, correct?
Yes. And if I was not satisfied, I had to sell because we were in need of cash. We had to sell.
Now, at the time you agreed in the share purchase agreement
Yes.
to sell the 57% to EuroGas, did you make any efforts to see if you could develop interest from another buyer?
To what?
to develop interest in the control position in Rosemont by selling them to another buyer. Did you
No,
consider
no,
that?
No,
Is there any reason why not?
no,
Did you know what the shares were going to be worth?
no, we didn't.
Did you get any professional advice on whether you were paying fair value for the shares?
We spoke to our auditors, and we were told not to hold those shares, not hold to those shares.
Right. But you made absolutely no efforts to explore whether there might be another buyer.
Another what?
Buyer. Buyer.
Buyer. So, no.
I mean,
Nobody would buy 12 million shares.
nobody would buy a controlling interest in Rosemont at that point in time?
No, not 12 million shares. Not controlling interest, because it was sold already. You're talking now about the 55% or 57% of interest in Rosemont?
Let's be clear on this, because I think this is important. You owned the 57% interest
Yes,
in Rosemont.
Rosemont.
You'd bought them from Dorfner and Tyson.
Yes, that's correct.
Together, it was clearly a controlling position in Rosemont.
Yes,
And your case here is that at the time you were selling those shares, you were getting ready to sell them, additional drilling had been done, correct?
yes,
Lots of studies had been done, correct?
yes,
Your memorial says that the project had been de-risked, correct?
I think so.
My question is, did you consider the possibility that if the project was, as you described, fully de-risked, there might be another buyer who would
For
want
the
to,
55%.
who might want to buy the shares of a controlling interest in Rosemont? Did you consider that?
Yes.
Did you take any steps?
Yes, we did. As I told you previously, we were talking to one Slovak guy, also Slovak, from Slovakia, from Bratislava. His name was Horvat. He was interested in it, to buy the shares.
Did he ever make an offer?
He made a very low offer. Yes, very, very low. Because he said we have to develop the mine and so and so. So it was very low.
Because he said we have to develop the mine. What did he mean by that?
There was nothing. We just started the mine, the tunneling. So he said we have to develop it.
It wasn't
Because-
far enough along?
No,
And no other buyer
No.
appeared for a controlling interest in Rosemont?
no,
Did you take any steps to try to market it?
no, we didn't.
You had a very close relationship with EuroGas, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
At the time you were a director.
I don't know if I was director at this time, because I don't remember, because it was after my heart surgery, open heart surgery. But I was a director of EuroGas for a while, for about 2 or 3 years.
Well, your relationship was so close with EuroGas that sometimes in SEC filings it was described as other than an arm's length relationship. Do you remember that?
No. What was this?
You remember it was described as a related party transaction sometimes when you did deals with EuroGas?
That doesn't mean anything, because that wasn't outsider who was buying the deal or something.
Do you remember the Maseva deal?
Yes, I
Well,
do.
Tell the tribunal what Maseva was.
Maseva was a concession back east around Trebišov, what we bought, I think so, from EuroGas. We paid 50,000 euros for it, but there was absolutely nothing. We did some preliminary drilling and we didn't find anything.
Do you remember that the Maseva interest was sold to EuroGas and then bought back by Belmont within a very short period of time?
No,
Don't even remember?
no. I don't think so it ever happened.
Excuse me one minute. Do you recall, sir, Belmont booking a net gain on the disposal of its 90% interest in Maseva Gas in the amount of 3 million euros?
No, we never had interest gain there. Where do you read that?
In your financial statements for the year ending 31 January 1999. Do you remember disclosing in those same financial statements that Belmont also disclosed a significant decline in the quoted market value of EuroGas shares?
No, I don't remember that.
Do you remember Belmont reacquiring the shares in Maseva in the same year?
No, absolutely not. This is something new to me.
EuroGas reported in its 10K for 2002, I will represent to you, that the transaction appears not to have been, well, let me read you the actual language. Although the transfer of Maseva back to Belmont was not an arm's length transaction, it resulted in the recognition of a loss on the disposition of $6,528,000. Does that ring any bells with you?
No,
Not at all.
no, absolutely nothing.
How did you arrive at the purchase price that you were going to ask EuroGas to pay for the Belmont 57% interest?
How I arrived? The value of the deposit.
Did you have any assessment done of the value of the deposit?
Yes,
And who did that?
the Slovaks,
And
The-
who would that be?
the Slovak government. Slovak government. It was blocked out, and they said that how many tons we have here, and then our accountants, they worked out, engineers, how much it is worth.
And have you seen any documents in preparation for your testimony here today that have anything to do with that valuation process?
No,
This is just something you remember happening,
just vaguely,
vaguely.
yeah.
Were you aware that EuroGas Inc. Sold the 57% interest in Roseman after you executed the share purchase agreement to EuroGas GmbH? Were you aware of that?
No. They couldn't sold it because it wasn't theirs.
Right, and the fact that they did sell it would suggest that they certainly believed it was theirs, wouldn't it?
That I don't know. You have to ask them.
We do plan to do that. Were you aware of the fact that EuroGas AG announced the fact that those shares, as I've just described, that was announced to the German Stock Exchange?
No.
News to you.
No, news.
Did you give any consideration after the Slovak Republic filed its counter memorial to what Belmont had filed in this proceeding, of responding at all to any of the factual allegations, factual statements that had been made by any witness?
No,
Didn't even consider it?
no.
Now, after you sold the 57% interest in Roseman, according to your audited financial statements, booked it as a sale and disposition, and held the shares as an asset, there came a point in time when Belmont management made the conclusion to impair that holding, didn't there?
What is impaired?
Write down because the value has declined?
Yeah, yes, that's not the management, that's the auditors.
Right, well, if the auditors were here, I'm sure they would tell you that the financial statements are the representations of management because it always says that on the front of the audit, doesn't it?
I agree with you.
Okay. And you issued an impairment after you'd held those shares for a period of time, correct?
Yes,
And part of the reason you issued the impairment was because you were concerned about whether you would ever be able to collect on the value contemplated by the asset purchase agreement.
that's correct.
The value of the interest in EuroGas, as time went on, continued to decline, correct? Now, let the record reflect that you took your hand and pushed down. I read that as you were gesticulating stock market decline. Did I read that correctly?
I was pushing it down.
Yes. And you were pushing it down because the stock market, the market value of EuroGas on the exchanges plummeted, didn't it?
It did.
And in fact, it went below $1 a share, did it not?
Oh, it went below 5 cents a share.
I was going to get there eventually, thank you. And once it got below 5 cents a share, it pretty much stayed there for years, didn't it?
We were selling around there. There was, we didn't have any other choice. We wanted to liquidate.
And did there come a point in time, as of, that there was full provision, in other words, a total write-down of the value of those shares?
That I don't know.
All right. But it wouldn't surprise you that there had been a very substantial write-down of the value of the EuroGas shares.
It wouldn't.
And it wouldn't surprise you that that had taken place well before the Slovak Republic reassigned the excavation area, would it?
No, it was really well before.
It, yeah, I don't know what that means, do you? Yeah. Do you agree that the impairment charges you were booking in your financial statements occurred well before
Yes, I
the
agree.
reassignment of the excavation area? Is that right?
Yes,
And the reason you were taking those impairments was because Belmont Management's assessment, confirmed by its auditors, was that the EuroGas shares had really no more significant value.
you're absolutely correct.
And the reason you concluded that the EuroGas shares had no more significant value well before the reassignment of the excavation area was because work had ceased on the project, correct?
Yes,
There was a major shortfall in needed capital to move forward with the project.
correct.
Mr. Robal had been trying for some time to find an investor without success, correct?
I don't know for how, what is sometimes, but he was looking for investors.
And he had no success.
No.
And no bank was willing to lend on the project, correct?
Oh, that I don't know. If they were willing lend for the project to Chore, then probably they would lend him too. I don't know if he approached banks or not.
Right. But to your knowledge, Mr. Robal, neither you nor Mr. Robal had any successful discussions with any lenders?
No, I don't know. That I don't know.
Now, let's look again at your witness statement if we can. If we could put that before him.
I have it here.
Now, I'd like to call your attention to paragraph 16. This is of Mr. Ajagosha's witness statement. And in paragraph 16, I'd like to go down about 8 lines to the sentence that begins, "With respect to the third obligation." Do you see where I am?
Yes,
EuroGas agreed to arrange the necessary funding to place the Gamerska Paloma talc deposit into commercial production within 1 year from the date of execution of this agreement, which would have been 27 March 2002. Do you agree?
yes, I do.
All right. And did you ask for that commitment from EuroGas?
Yes, I
And
ask.
And why did you ask
What's
for that?
happening? Because the shares were coming down, the value of the shares was coming down. I said, what is happening here? Why we not progressing? Couldn't find anybody to finance the Gamerska Paloma.
And when you say couldn't find anybody to finance Gamerska Paloma, who are you referring to? Who couldn't find?
Raba,
Do you know if he tried to do that?
I'm positive because he always tries.
And despite those efforts, you ultimately came to the conclusion that he was unable to find anyone, did you not?
Yes,
That there was no financing and no investor.
yes, correct.
And this was, of course, continued for several years after the year 2000, when, according to your case before this tribunal, the project had been fully de-risked. Is that right?
I don't know how to answer this one.
All right. But in any event, it continued for many years after 2003, that no financing could be found.
No financing, but we had money. We could have give money to Belmont, or not to Belmont, to Rosmin. But we didn't want to give money to Rosmin.
And when did you come to the conclusion that you did not want to give money to Roseman?
I was waiting always for EuroGas to come up with their money.
So at that point in time, your view was that you had a contract that said EuroGas promised,
Have to, yes,
excuse me, promised Belmont that it was going to provide the financing necessary to bring it to production in 1 year.
1 year, yes.
Right. And did you believe that to be a reasonable period of time to do that?
No, not to the production, commercial production, no. Because nobody can go down 1,300 meters in a year.
Well, why would you put a term in the contract if you didn't think it was possible?
That's he put it there. Yeah, that's what he wanted there. I don't care. So to go there.
So EuroGas insisted that the deadline be 1 year.
1 year, yes.
Did he believe it was possible?
I guess so.
Now, after this commitment by EuroGas to provide the necessary financing to get to production within 1 year was made, after that was made, is it true that Rima Moran began to experience significant shortfalls in funding?
No, it is not. We always paid our bills.
Did you pay them late?
Sometimes not right on the time, but we always paid.
And you eventually came to an agreement with Rima Moran to suspend the contract, correct?
Yes,
And at that time, all further activities on the mine came to a halt.
yes, that's correct.
And the mine was flooded?
it is still flooded.
And the mine was vandalized,
Yes, I would say yes.
and the power supply to the mine became deteriorated?
It didn't become, trees fell on it, and we paid Chore to fix it. We gave him 1 million crowns down payment, never did anything.
Now, EuroGas was the majority shareholder in Rima Moran, correct?
Yes.
And
By,
during the-
by that time, I think so, only EuroGas was there. They bought the Rima Moran's interest too.
Right.
But I don't know the date there.
But during the period of time when you were having such significant difficulties with Chore and what you've described as his request for
More money, more money.
additions to the contract, during that period of time, the majority shareholder of Rima Moran, the contractor with whom Chore was associated, the majority shareholder of Rima Moran was EuroGas, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And you were then a director of EuroGas.
Ye- Was I that year? I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sure when I resigned.
Well, you were still continued to be involved with EuroGas.
I was
even at-
involved,
right.
but I don't know if I was a director.
In fact, you put in some modest amounts of working capital from time to time, didn't
Yes,
you? All
yes.
right. Even after you'd sold the shares to
Yeah, we
EuroGas.
still keep supporting it to pay the small bills.
Right. And notwithstanding the payment of those small bills, from your perspective, Chore had become pretty much of a disaster, correct?
Disaster, completely pretty much. It's a completely disaster. became.
All right. What steps, if any, did EuroGas use by virtue of its control over Rima Moran as the majority shareholder to find a contractor in the 2001 time period to get the project going again?
We were looking for contractors, and by the year 2004, we found the best contractor we ever could have, Siderit.
All right.
It
And
was a mine next to Gemerska Poloma.
And that was 3 years after
3
work.
years after, yes.
3 years after work
Yeah.
had been suspended.
Yes, that's correct.
So, in that 3-year period, Cedare was doing business in the Slovak Republic, wasn't it?
Yes, they were operating mine.
And they're a prominent company in this field, are they not?
Yes.
Right. Do you know of any reason why Rima Moran couldn't have contracted with Cedare at the time the work was suspended?
I have no idea.
I
I
don't
don't, my opinion, but that's only personal, he couldn't work with those people.
Did you consider employing?
I'm going to have to object to these questions for the witness to read in the mind of your witness. I mean, that's not a cross-examination.
Oh, that's, well then, thank you for the clarification. Let's be clear. My question to you was, is there any reason EuroGas couldn't have taken steps because it was the majority owner of Rima Moran to hire Cedare at an earlier point in time?
That I don't know.
There were other contractors potentially available, weren't there?
Not I know of.
Did you ever investigate?
Yes. Not I know of.
And
And if they were very expensive.
very expensive.
Yes.
At the time you put the, finally put the reopening works out for bid, 3 years after the work had been suspended, there were a number of bidders, weren't there?
I think so, they 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, let's go back to your witness statement for a second. Uh, And let's look at tab 6, if we can, from your witness bundle. That's tab 6, exhibit R233. I want to finish a point we had touched on briefly before.
Yeah, tab 6.
Mr. Agigos, a few minutes ago, you testified that the stock value of EuroGas had plummeted. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
And this is a Bloomberg report of the stock value of EuroGas from the period of 1995 through 2011. Do you see the scale down there at the bottom?
With great difficulties, I don't have my glasses.
Well,
Forgot my glasses, yeah. Can you help me? Jaký rok je to? 95, yeah, okay. Okay, I see it.
all right. Now, you remember, Mr. Agigos, that we had talked about the statement in your memorial to the effect that in 2000, the project had been totally de-risked of any technical and financial issues. Do you remember that?
I think so, David.
All right. Now, would you agree with me, Mr. Agigos, that looking at this stock value of the period from 2000 and 2011, there's no indication in the trading value of the stock that the market as a whole thought there was no risk in EuroGas?
The market is same for a couple of years.
Below $1.
Oh, well below, 90 cents.
Yeah,
Oh, 90 cents, 9 cents.
9
Sorry,
cents.
9 cents, 9.5.
Now, there came a point in time, if you'd look at paragraph 28,
Where?
this is in your witness statement.
I do have it.
All right. Now, you're describing there, of course, your theory that Belmont still owned the shares.
Yes.
You see that, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And in order to ensure the progress of the project, you continue to inject some working capital. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then you describe that EuroGas agreed with Belmont that it would continue to provide financing and working capital, and that for each USD 10,000, I assume that's $10,000.
Yes, that's
Belmont
correct.
would invest in Roseman in the form of working capital. Belmont would reduce by 1% the 57% interest.
It is not put right. Belmont, it was EuroGas's shares. EuroGas had then 43%. And for each $10,000, they would reduce the holding 1%. That's how it was supposed to be.
All right.
I don't know how it is like that.
So,
But-
so at that point in time, as between the parties, 1% was worth $10,000.
Yes.
So whether it's,
Oh, no, it was worth a lot more, but that's what kind of the deal we made.
right, I understand.
It was worth a lot more.
Between the
1%.
parties,
Yeah.
that's the way I put my
Oh,
question.
okay.
Between the parties valued 10,000, 1% of the company as $10,000 US, correct, in this deal?
In this deal.
So 57% between the parties would be worth $570,000. between the parties.
Mr. Alexander, you mixing it up again with Belmont. This is EuroGas. This is no good. This is not correct. EuroGas, Belmont would put up the money, and EuroGas had 43%. Yes, I see.
Now, I may not have my math here handy, but maybe we can get it done. It looks here like you were, let's see. I may be at the wrong paragraph here. Here we go. Yeah, 33, Belmont injected, but let's make it easy. Roughly 100,000, rounding the 97 up to 100. Then 13,000 twice, so that'd be 126,000. And then another roughly 20,000, so that'd be 146,000. And then finally 24,000. Did I miss one?
24,000, yeah, that was 1 million Slovak crowns,
Okay,
almost.
so,
Yeah,
so 146, that'd be 170,000 total there. Does that sound
yes,
about right?
correct. Yeah, that's about right.
All right, so 170,000 there, plus the 124 we had before. I'm going to round that up again. That's, so a total of 300,000. And then there was one other occasion, I believe I recall seeing, where there was another small amount. It's not jumping off the page at me right now, but now I wanted to, bearing that number 300,000, and I might ask Katka if she could look for that final paragraph where there's another injection. Do you see it? The final injection of working capital, if you could just look for that. So we're going to hold that number 300, that rounded up number 300, while we look for that final injection. So now I want to go to your expert's report. I'm sorry, I want to go to, well, let's do this. Maybe we can simplify this. Do you have a ballpark of how much working capital you invested over the years?
No, I
None at all.
No idea.
But when you were recording this witness statement, your goal was to be complete in describing it fully.
Yes,
All right. So whatever your witness statement says, you believe that's a fair statement?
pretty good, yeah, in the ballpark.
In the ballpark, fair enough. Now, what is your understanding as you sit here today as to how much capital would have been required to bring the mine to production, to build the processing plant, and to go to market?
I tell you, to bring the mine to production, according to our estimate, what we received from Mr. Chorey, was 74,000. We know that it was very low, so 100,000 that time. It was a long time ago. That's Slovak crowns. And the processing plant, that's much more expensive. I cannot even give you the slightest idea how much it cost.
I think my colleague here has been helpful. If we can back up to where we were before, holding that 300,000 in our head, I want to add to it what you described in paragraph 32 of your witness statement. Now, this time it's in Canadian dollars. Now, actually, here what you're describing what you raised. I was actually trying to total what you injected, which is a different question. So Katka's going to find that for us in a second. How did you raise these funds that you describe in paragraph 32?
Or how? By financing, public financing.
Could you describe that more fully for us?
Public financing. We said that we have to raise some money for this project, and people give money to the company.
You sold stock.
Stocks, yes. That's the only way for the public company.
All right.
I bought myself also a lot, like everybody else. So,
Okay. But you're satisfied that the working capital that you injected is properly described
Yes,
in your
yes,
witness
I am.
statement? Okay. And do you know how those amounts of working capital injected compare to what your own expert has estimated that the total cost would be to develop the mine?
he
put
never
it into-
estimated.
Excuse me. Your expert is what I'm describing about. Your expert in this proceeding for these hearings. Have you ever looked at his expert report?
Our expert.
Yes, your expert.
Who was that?
WAI,
WAI.
excuse me?
WAI?
Yes.
I don't even know such an expert.
Well, let's take a look
I
at
never
your,
read anything. Oh, Wardell. Oh, he's here. He was just now hired, so I don't know what his estimate is. I never read it.
never read it. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, rather than belabor that with you, we'll talk to him about that.
Yes.
All right. But,
He's here around somewhere.
right, I'm sure. Okay. All right. Mr. Chairman, could I have a very short break? I think I'm very close to done, and I just want to check with my colleagues.
You need
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, 5 minutes break.
Thank you very much.
Matthew?
Yes, Mr. Alexander.
Mr. Chairman, if I may proceed, I found my missing last working capital piece that I was looking for, and I just wanted to ask Mr. Hajakosh about that. If you could turn to paragraph 34 of your witness statement.
34?
34.
Yeah.
And do you see, remember I mentioned I was still looking, I thought there was one more? And towards the bottom of that paragraph, and in fact, by the time
25,
Belmont
24, yeah.
injected US 24,300, okay, so that's the one I was looking for. So bearing that find in mind, with the rounded up $300,000 we had before, do you believe that describes the working capital injections you had made to Rosman on behalf of Belmont?
Yes.
All right, thank you. That concludes my examination.
Thank you. Redirect.
We do, Mr. President, and for that, we would need the,
Speaker.
yes, we do have redirect questions. For that, we would ask you, Mr. Egiagos, to use the bundle that was handed to you by counsel for respondent, and the tribunal and you to have the opening bundles of yesterday that we distributed. Non, mais ça c'est plutôt Emmanuel. Emmanuel, c'est peut-être Hélène qui peut faire ça.
Tout?
May I proceed, Mr. President? Sir, you were questioned extensively on Rima Morin, Mr. Courage, and the works. And in your response, you raised budgeting issues. Were there and the amendments requested by
Yes,
Mira Morin.
sure.
What about quality? Was Roseman satisfied with the quality of the work?
Was the worst quality you ever seen in your life. All the mining experts and the inspectors who came to visit the mine, that is even, how you call it, report of that, what Mr. Rozoznik has, what will show the quality of the work.
During suggestion has been made to you by counsel for respondent that once the works of Rima Morin were suspended on the ground in 2001, there was basically nothing going on until 2004. And the question I have to you is that do you recall the events on the ground? On the ground, I mean, in relation to this project during the years 2001 to 2004. Do you know what happened?
I know what's happened, but as I said to Mr. Alexander, Rozložik was always there, he was doing it. He was checking the water, and everything there. So I
What was
cannot tell you too much about it.
What was Roseman doing?
He was checking the mine, the water, what kind of water is coming out, and he was building the stuff there. It's hard for me to answer for him.
Let me put it another way. Let me start this way. Did Rima Morin withdraw voluntarily from the project?
Yes.
Was it, did it require negotiations?
No.
Were you involved yourself at that time?
No, I wasn't.
Could you look at tab 20 of it's Mr. Rozluznik on October 15th notifying the district mining office that it says, as Rima Morin has not withdrawn from the contract.
What page is it?
The first page, it should be.
Notification?
Yes. Do you have the document? What date is the document in front of you?
Yeah.
What is the date of the?
Date of the document. What is the date?
Should be
October.
October 16, 2001.
It should be 15th.
15,
15th.
yeah.
It says in the end of the second paragraph, Rima Morin has not withdrawn from the contract. Have you seen this letter before?
No.
Okay. Then, were you involved in what you find at tab 22? So that letter I just quoted to you is October 15, 2001. It was exhibit C221. Then if you go to tab 22, you have a settlement agreement.
Two?
March 26, 2002. Did you negotiate that settlement agreement with Rima Morin?
Talking to me?
Yes, I'm asking you. There is nobody else.
I don't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you negotiate that settlement agreement? Was it you that was negotiating this settlement agreement on behalf of Roseman with Mira Morin?
No, no.
Okay. Then if you move to the tab '19.
Handover protocol?
Yes. Were you involved in the negotiations or
No.
the content of this?
No.
No. It is R0131, October 24, 2002. Apart from the October 15, 2001 letter sent by Roseman to the mining district, are you aware of any other letters informing the mining district of the suspension of the work?
No.
Could you look at tab 21? Have you seen this letter at the time, November 30th, 2001? Were you involved in that?
November 30th.
Thank you, Professor. It is in tab 21, and it's exhibit number, which we will give you shortly. C26. Sir,
Yes.
were you aware of that letter?
Yes, yes, I was.
Okay. Are you aware of, could you turn to tab 23? Which is R0251. What about
Letter?
this letter? Were you involved in that letter? Were you informed of that letter? Basically, you're requesting, Roseman is requesting an extension.
Yes.
Were you
Yes, sir.
aware, were you involved in the drafting of that letter?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. If you turn to now tab 24, which is C223, are you, and the following tab, which is C226, are you aware that Roseman, or were you involved, that's the question, with the litigation that evolved around that, naming that authorization that we just mentioned, the request for authorization of the
No, I
extension
wasn't.
being denied, then appealed with success? Were you involved in that?
No.
Okay. Now, do you recall Belmont putting money during 2001, 2004 into Roseman?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you recall that once, whether you tendered for a new contractor once you obtained the authorization to extend your mining activity?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall whether there were instructions to proceed with works pending finalization of the contract with the winning contractor, Siderit?
Yes, I do. I recall it.
Were you involved with the, if you turn to paragraph 28, C25, C254, set tab 28.
20, what's that, please?
See,
28.
25.
28.
Exhibit C245, 254, 255, C256, C257. These I understand to be Mr. Yagos' specific work orders to Siderit before the contract was finalized. Were you involved in that?
Yes.
Okay.
One day I was there. That was all. That's the
Okay.
scope of it. Maybe two, but I think so it was only one day.
What about the contract? Did you negotiate the contract? C259, the previous tab. 27.
C259. Let me read it.
The contract with Cedar Rate, I think
Yeah,
you negotiated that, okay. Was a down payment paid to Cedar Rate?
yes, it was.
Did Cedar Rate, apart from the pre-contract orders, start work under the contract?
Yes, they did.
Did it have any?
They were repairing the bridges.
Did it have, did Cedar Rate have any invoice outstanding?
No,
Did the government, anybody, any agency of the government, formally or informally, raise any concerns they had about the capacity of Rosebud to finance the project?
no, not as far as I know.
Now, if you go to tab 9 of the bundle distributed to you by Respondents Council, your discussions with the prosecutor, your testimony,
Ostatnia svalovu horúčku. Okay.
it should be R0115. And I would like you to turn to the third page, the paragraph before the last, on which you were questioned. And you said that Mr. Baffy told you that on midnight of the last November day of 2004, the mining rights would be revoked if the works had not been, if Rosebud had not started carrying out works.
That's correct. And we told him we are working there. We hired Siderit, and his answer was, I'm very happy.
Then if we go now to the opening bundle, this time the second opening bundle, at tab 58. You were questioned on this, it's R0114, on the audited consolidated financial statements that was issued on June 7th, 2002. On the
June
second-
7th,
June 7th, 2002.
here, January,
It's in tab 58.
58.
Yeah, we had it.
It's for the year January 31st, 2002 and
Yes.
2001, issued on June 7th, 2002. Anyways, if you could turn the page on to significant accounting policies. I know your testimony is that you're not an accountant, you're not a lawyer, but I would like you to nevertheless make an effort. Are you on the right page?
No, I'm not.
It's on 3 pages. The significant accounting policies are everywhere. It's on all the 3. So the first one.
The first one,
It's 2.
Okay.
consolidation. That's
Yes.
okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly, on the right page. No, on the right page, yes. You were questioned on these paragraphs. And if you look at the right up column under Canadian dollars, 3,044,000 Canadian dollars. According to your understanding, was that an amount that was actually realized, or was it projected? Was it expected? How would you describe that $3,044,000 amount?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Then how do you,
I'm the wrong person to ask.
I appreciate that. If you then go down for the first sentence, it says the company holds the Rosman shares pending settlement of the amount of guarantee shares to be issued by EuroGas and completion of the U.S. registration statement. What Can you offer us any explanation as what that meant? The company holds the Rosman shares pending settlement of the amount guarantee shares?
Rosmin was supposed to pay in full. No, not Rosmin. EuroGas was supposed to pay in full. What was 125% of initial investment, and plus outstanding royalties. Never ever happened. Nothing ever happened.
Okay, could you turn to the next tab, R0116? This is the subsequent in time. It's annual information form. Then if you look at page 3, at 2.2, it says the issuer still holds the Rosman shares pending realization of an agreed amount sale of restricted common shares issued by EuroGas. What is your understanding of that sentence, pending realization of an agreed dollar amount?
The issue still holds the number of shares pending
It's R0116 at tab
It is.
29.
If EuroGas would have filed registration S, what is required, probably we would have realized it.
My understanding, what is your understanding pending realization of an agreed dollar amount? If you look at that document, the issuer still holds the Rosman shares. Don't look at me, Mr. Gallegos.
I don't hear you if I don't look at you.
The issuer still holds the Rosman shares pending realization of an agreed dollar amount. What is,
Yes.
what is your
Or
understanding?
we were holding some, not all.
What's the pending realization of an agreed dollar amount?
Whenever we sell the shares, the whole amount of shares, they have 12 million, it depends how much we would get for it.
Okay. If you then move on to the next tab, actually, you can even skip that and go forward to, for the sake of time, I will just pass that and go to R0117 at tab 64. This time, it's a lawyer, it's a letter from a lawyer. Who's Fang and Associates? Are they your lawyers?
Yes,
Okay.
corporate.
Do you understand, what is your, it says the company hereby demands a letter to EuroGas that EuroGas surrender any claims it may have of any interest, and goes on to say that there is a shortfall.
He's true, he's right.
Is there any relationship between the documents that I read to you, the amount for realization, and this document?
This document was dated. when
It's
was-
later in the year, later in
September
2004.
16.
Yes.
Yes. Year later, you said?
I'm asking you whether this talks about the same thing that we've been talking about in the financial statements.
Yes, it is the same.
Okay. Then, just one question. If you move, then at tab 66, C043, and the following ones, C0344. Here, it's a press release, and it says Belmont owns 50% share of Rosman, and the following one, it talks about an action based on 50% interest of Belmont Resources. When you issued those, did anyone at the Stock Venture Exchange, EuroGas 1, EuroGas 2, Mr. Robal, anyone in the world challenge the fact that this was inconsistent with your financial statements?
No.
Today, is anyone, apart from the Slovak Republic, alleging that you do not own full ownership of the 50% shares?
The Slovak Republic is wrong.
Except the Slovak Republic. I'm asking you, does
No,
anyone
no.
in the world?
No,
Thank
I
you,
don't know any such a person.
thank you.
We never received full consideration, so
Thank you.
cannot.
That ends now.
I just have a question. No question. You, no, no. Your position is that Belmont still owns the 57%.
Yes.
Because the sale was not completed, the
Yes.
sale to EuroGas. As a price for this sale, you receive a certain number
Yes.
of shares of EuroGas, which you sold. And I understand that that price you received, selling the
correct.
shares, was not high enough. The number, the amount of which you got from that sale was not enough, considering what the contract has provided. But can you explain how it is possible that you keep the shares and also keep the price, or at least the price you
That's for
could
damages.
realize?
That's for damages. We incurred lots of damages because of that, because of late filing and many other things.
Can you expand a little more?
We couldn't sell those shares when we received. They were supposed to be qualified for sale with the registration S, but they were not. If that would have happened, we probably would have realized the full amount. And now we are incurring here damages because we had many businesses where we couldn't pay, or whatever. We went drilling, we had to stop. We had programs, we had to stop. We couldn't do anything.
Thank you. Any follow-up question on this? Yes?
Mr. Giagos, there are a number of amendments and correspondences, including press releases, letters from your lawyers. Who paid for your lawyers?
We paid.
Okay. Is anyone in the world asking you to restitute the amount that you received in partial payment for the shares when it was?
No.
Okay.
Answer is no.
Thank you.
Well, that triggers another question. Did you discuss with Mr. Raubal, because it's $1.5 million, if I'm correct. The explanation that you gave me, did that give rise to discussions with Mr. Raubal? Or
I can discuss it. I didn't discuss this with him yet, but I'm sure we will be talking about it.
But at the time of these discussions, the result of which was the shares are not transferred, but you keep the 1.5 million. Was that easily accepted by Mr. Robel?
Quite easily, because he knew that he cannot do more. He cannot complete the deal. The SPA cannot complete. Didn't have the means.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's my last one.
Mr. Giagos, President of the Tribunal, represented that you received $1,500,000 from Mr. Robol or EuroGas entity. Was it the $1,500,000 in cash or just shares issued by the gentleman or EuroGas that you sold thereafter?
Those were sold shares.
Thank you.
That
Sold
proceeds
by whom?
by the company,
Which company?
by Belmont,
Thank you.
through the open market.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Mr.
much, sir.
Giagos. This completes your examination. I think it's proper time for an early lunch. So we break for 1 hour, and then we'll hear Mr. Robel. Mr. Agiagos, of course, you're not allowed to talk with...
I see we don't talk. We're like enemies here.
Well, yes.
If you want to put Mr. Robol, subject to Ms. Burton's, under oath and give him instructions, given the allegations of impropriety, especially that when we're working, we'll leave it up to you.
Oh, no, unless it's requested, in which case we would decide, but we don't take that initiative. Okay, so let's say 1:05 with Mr. Robel. Thank you, Mr. Agiagos.
Thank you.